The jasmine hung thick in the air, a cloying perfume that choked the night with promises too fragile to hold. I stood before the mirror, my wedding dress a shroud of white fire under the chandelier's glare, my hands trembling as they clutched the veil. I was tight, and the world screamed that this was my zenith, my wedding day, where life should unfurl like a rose in bloom. But inside, I was a river raging against a crumbling dam, my soul clawing at the bars of a cage I'd built myself. My name is Anna, and this is the story of how I was shattered, drowned, and forged anew in the crucible of my own choices. The wedding was a tempest of sound and color. Laughter crashing like waves, glasses clinking like distant thunder, vows that burned my tongue as I spoke them. Daniel, my husband, was a fortress of a man, steady, kind, his love a bedrock I thought would anchor me. But as we swayed under a canopy of stars, the hollowness inside me roared louder than the music. It was a void, a locked chamber in my heart where something unnamed screamed to be free. I smiled, I kissed him, I danced. But the river within me churned, its currents hissing, "Is this all you are?" 3 months later, I sat on the cold tile of the bathroom floor, a pregnancy test trembling in my grip. 2 pink lines stared back, not a promise, but a verdict. My chest tightened as if the walls of my life were closing in, crushing me. I wasn't ready. The life inside me felt like a storm I couldn't weather, a weight I couldn't carry. Daniel's joy was a blade, his dreams of cribs and tiny hands sliced through my resolve. I felt myself sinking, the water rising, dark and merciless, over my head. I didn't tell him about the clinic. The secret was a shard of glass in my throat. The place was a sterile abyss, its fluorescent lights buzzing like vultures circling a corpse. I lay on the table, my body rigid, my eyes fixed on a crack in the ceiling as the procedure tore through me. When it was done, the pain wasn't just physical, it was a scream in my bones, a raw, gaping wound where something sacred had been ripped away. I told myself it was the right choice, that I was saving us from a life unready. But the river inside me had burst, and it was drowning me in grief. The months that followed were a descent into shadow. The guilt was a beast. Its claws sunk deep into my chest, tearing at me with every breath. I saw the child in my dreams, a faceless shadow, its eyes accusing, its voice a whisper in the dark. Why didn't you want me? Daniel felt the fracture in me, the way I recoiled from his touch, the way my gaze drifted to nowhere. Our fights were battles, silences that exploded into shouted words, glasses shattered against walls, doors slammed like guillotines. One night, in a rage I barely recognized, I struck him, a desperate, flailing blow that left us both stunned, the air between us thick with blood and betrayal. I fled to the city's edge, to a park where a stream carved its way through ancient trees. The water was black under the moon, its surface a mirror for my shattered self. I collapsed by its banks, my screams tearing through the night, my fists pounding the earth until my knuckles bled. The pain of the abortion was a fire in my soul, burning away the lies I'd told myself. I wasn't protecting us. I was running from myself, from the woman I was too afraid to become. The river watched, silent, its flow a relentless reminder that life moves on, even when you're breaking. Then I saw her, Lila, an old woman with eyes like burning coals, sitting on a bench with a tattered book of poetry. She didn't flinch at my tear-streaked face or bloodied hands. The river doesn't fight its wounds, she said, her voice a low rumble like thunder on the horizon. It carries them until they become part of its strength. Her words were a lightning bolt, splitting the darkness of my despair. She became my guide, a warrior priestess who taught me to face the abyss within, to wield my pain like a blade honed for truth. I dove into the wreckage of my soul. I read ancient texts on suffering and redemption, their words like torches in a cave. I meditated by the stream, its relentless flow washing away the debris of my guilt. I wrote until my hands cramped, each page a battlefield where I fought to understand. The abortion wasn't just a loss, it was a cataclysm, a violent rupture that forced me to see the truth. I had been living a lie, wearing a mask of perfection to hide my fear. I was terrified of failing, of being seen, of loving a child I didn't know how to raise. The river became my altar. I saw my life as its waters, turbulent, scarred, but always seeking the sea. The pain of the abortion wasn't a curse. It was a crucible, forging me into something new. I realized the world wasn't a stage for my performance, but a vast, pulsing tapestry of light and shadow, where every wound, every choice wove me into something greater. I began to understand enlightenment, not as a distant peak, but as the courage to stand in the fire of my own truth. Daniel and I parted in a storm of tears and broken promises. I couldn't be his wife until I was whole. I moved into a sparse apartment, its empty walls a canvas for my rebirth. I painted again, my brush slashing across the canvas, colors bleeding like the emotions I'd locked away. I volunteered at a shelter holding the hands of women whose skits mirrored mine, their stories a chorus of survival. Each act was a defiance of the darkness that had nearly consumed me. One night, by the stream, I felt the shift. The fire in my chest had cooled to a steady glow, like embers after a blaze. The guilt, the pain, the violence of my choices. They were no longer chains, but stepping stones. I was awake, my soul alight with a fierce, unyielding clarity. I was no longer the woman who cowered from her own heart. Now I live with purpose. I rise with the dawn, my breath a prayer, my hands steady as I paint or write. I've traded perfection for truth, fear for courage, the abortion, the marriage, the violence. They were tempests that carved me into this new form. I don't know where the river will lead, but I trust its flow, its wild, untamed path to the sea. I am Anna, and I am alive, not because I escaped the fire, but because I walked through it and emerged as light.